So we're about 22 hours away from Yom Kippur in St. Louis. It's an amazing day, so we should hopefully try to get a bit of perspective on some different issues in Yom Kippur. None of these ideas are my own. I'll quote as we go along, and hopefully we'll have a bit of a more deeper appreciation for Yom Kippur, what the day is, what our vote is for this amazing day. So first, I want to discuss. I heard this idea from Rabbi Yisrael Auerbach, formerly of New Jersey and currently of Israel. He made Aliyah about a year ago, and he said something that really tunes you in to the mood of Yom Kippur and the Aseret Yemei Tshuva in general. That during the Shmoneh Esrei, during the week, we say the Amidah. There are 19 blessings, and one of the very first ones actually, I believe it's the fifth, is Harotzeh B'Tshuva, right? That God should accept his back, and he desires tshuva. Now, often many of us will say this like 3 times a day, and we don't really step back and think about what we're saying here. But now is the time of the year to really think about it. What does that mean, Harotzeh B'Tshuva? Why did God have to say that? The fact that we can even do tshuva is amazing. But the fact that we can go through God's world, destroy it, right? Work against his will. He has his explicit commandments, which we violate. And that not only does he accept tshuva, but that the Amidah prayer goes out of its way to say, Harotzeh B'Tshuva. He wants us to do tshuva. That's a completely different message. It's one thing, when people anger us or frustrate us, whatever, if they apologize, we'll accept it, but that's to say that we even want to have any association with them whatsoever, right? That's it. You've caused the damage. Now get in my face. I never want to see you again. That's not what God is saying. So not only does he accept tshuva, that tshuva is even available for us, but he wants it. He wants us to do tshuva. He wants us to return to him. That's the first astonishing idea that's even present in these Aseret Yemei Tshuva that culminates in Yom Kippur. Now, Rav Bernstein then goes in on this book to kind of just taking a step back and appreciating Yom Kippur for what it is. Because after all, again, who says the tshuva is even an option? So let's try to appreciate it. So he says the Yom Kippur actually presents 3 amazing chidushim that as we walk in and take some time before Yom Kippur begins to really think about, is that tshuva is even possible. Again, God has these commandments that he commands us, the Jewish people, his people, and we go through life and ignore them, or knowingly violate them, or in some way, shape, or fashion, we cause damage to the world that God has created. And that, in spite of this, even though we do so, he says, you know what? Even so, you have tshuva, I would love for you to return to me. And only that he's made it possible, but it's actually even available. After all, often when we go through certain life circumstances, say we're trying to find a job, we're trying to go study somewhere else and get a visa, right? The visa application process could be long and time-consuming, and you might have to go to different places. Job interviews sometimes require you to fly out of the country to go if you're looking for a new job, to go interview with different people, FaceTiming people, preparing all these questions, going through 5 different rounds. Tshuva is not like that. Tshuva is immediately available to you. All you have to do is, not only is it possible, right? But even so, you think, hey, it's possible now. You can fly out of this next big country. You'll have to take an international flight to do so. Not so. Tshuva is available to us wherever we are. Those are 2 chidushim. That's possible and that's available. The third, maybe, is the greatest of all. The fact that God has penciled us in every single year to do tshuva, to re-meet him, to greet him, and to be reacquainted and to bring this relationship back to what it's supposed to be. That's just unbelievable. So not only has he made tshuva a possibility, right, and not only has he made it easily available to us, but he wants us. So that if ever we think, I'm such a terrible person, God isn't interested, he doesn't want to hear from me, there's no point of going to synagogue. No. Of course there's a point of going to synagogue. How do you know that? The fact that he arranged this meeting to begin with. He's here. He wants you. There's Yom Kippur. That happens every single year because He wants to hear from us. We're His people. And as we go into Yom Kippur, we should really think of that. And the third is this is something we've been saying a lot over the past, I guess, 9 days now, as of Rosh Hashanah, Avinu Malkeinu. That actually, amazingly, so we start this on Rosh Hashanah, which is really dominated by this theme of Malchuyot, right? The fact that we're crowning God as our King. That is like the theme of Rosh Hashanah. If there's one thing you don't want to come out of Rosh Hashanah with, is that's like, oh wait, so like, is God King or is He not King? Like, what was the main point of Rosh Hashanah? That's it. God is the King. That's like the central theme. And even so, we sing Avinu Malkeinu. Now, those are two very different relationships. A relationship with your father is not the same as a relationship with your king. Read some historic accounts. Big differences. But even so, even given that these are different relationships, and even given the fact that Rosh Hashanah is centrally and most importantly about like crowning God as king and recognizing Him as king, the Avinu comes first. His relationship to us as father, that comes first. Now, what are we supposed to take from this? So if the king's servant, right, let's say we're to go missing, or to leave the palace, you're to go and to start doing things that he knows the king doesn't like or want, and you're to just immerse himself into a life like this, and then after a great deal of time you're to return to the palace, there's going to be a reckoning with the king. Why were you not here? How much damage have you done? It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. A son who leaves his father will do the same thing. A son who leaves his father's house, right, and goes around and starts doing things that his father doesn't approve of and starts causing damage, and he just leaves and he only returns after a significant amount of time, there will also be a reckoning. The difference is, when he returns home, his father will embrace him first. Before everything else comes, first the father's going to be delighted that his son is back home. And as such, as we're walking through these days and seeing Avinu Malkeinu, because it's worthwhile just reading, at least maybe not all of them, at least some of them trying to connect to their message, but realizing that God's relation to us is firstly, even now, even at this times, He's as a father. He wants to take care of us, and He's also our King. So you should go into Yom Kippur, to this last day of the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, where we're saying Avinu Malkeinu so many times, to really keep this in mind. Now, lastly, many people dread Yom Kippur because of the fasting element of it, which is understandable. Fasting isn't the most enjoyable thing in the world to do, especially as Jews. We have like 80 or 90 feast days throughout our calendar year, something like that. Probably closer to 80 maybe. 50 Shabbats, right? Between Pesach and Sukkot, that's another 15. Setters, add them up for yourself. That's a lot. Now, what's sometimes as we're going through Yom Kippur, really trying to connect on these amazing prayers and this incredible avoda, this huge focus of this day, and later on in the day we start to get dehydrated and tired and we're hungry and we're being distracted, and wouldn't it be better off if we could at least just eat like a small meal? After all, they're on Rosh Hashanah often because the prayers are so long. We actually break after Shachrit. We go, we eat a quick Kiddush, and then we come back. So now we're re-energized and we can focus. It's also so that we're not fasting on Rosh Hashanah, but we're going to do the same thing on Yom Kippur. Eat something small. Now you can come in reinvigorated. That's the question. Sure, everyone has thought of that. So for that, we'll look to the Mishnah in Yoma. Yoma is one of the Masechtas, one of the tractates in Moadim, which is one of the 6 Sidrei Mishnah. It's one of the 6 orders of the Mishnah. Right? So Yoma talks about Yom Kippur, the Yom Kippur Avoda, and amazingly, actually, very little of it discusses the themes that we're most familiar with about Yom Kippur. Only the very last chapter actually talks about the fast and the things that you're not allowed to do, wearing leather shoes, etc. Right? The rest is almost exclusively about the Kohen Gadol service, which, if you're paying attention, is most of Musaf, right? Like Achat, Achat v'Achat, Achat v'Shtayim. That's discussing part of the Kohen Gadol service. It was pretty much all him. Bnei Yisrael used to just watch the Kohen Gadol perform the service on Yom Kippur. That was the main event. Fine. So in this Mishnah in Yoma, what are we not allowed to eat? How much are we not allowed to eat, right? First, it's a Torah prohibition to eat or drink anything. anything whatsoever. However, in order to be actually liable for some kind of punishment, or at least some tangible punishment, there's something called a shi'ur, right? A certain requisite amount to be liable. Now, normally, when we talk about shi'urim, it's either a kazait, if it's something physical, right? Some kind of like food stuff, or a lug, I believe. A kazait or a revius, right? A revius, which is about 3 fluid ounces. So that's normally the shear. So what does this mean? How do we know such a thing? So for example, on Friday night, right, especially on Friday night, when a person is making, or whatever, I guess, comes Sukkot night, the first night of Sukkot, when you're making Kiddush, right, you're doing it over wine, and then, the person who makes the bracha drinks. Now, often you'll notice that the host actually he doesn't take just a little bit of a sip, he takes like a gulp, he takes a fairly significant amount of wine. So why? Because in order for the mitzvah of Kiddush to be chal, there's actually a certain amount of wine that needs to be had by, if not the person who made the bracha, then at least one of the people who was yotzi with him, right? Who had in mind to do the mitzvah. Mitzvahs require kavana, by the way. You need to have intention to fulfill the mitzvah. So the person who's making Kiddush has kavana to be motzi himself, and to mostly everyone at the table. So either him or someone at the table needs to drink that requisite amount. So often he'll do it, because he's the one who did Kiddush. So he'll pour a certain amount for himself or take a drink, and then he'll start distributing, and everyone else can drink like a minimal amount. Very little. The point is because that mitzvah requires a certain shiur, right, a certain requisite amount to lock it in, to make it bichal. Fine. Same thing, by the way, is with the food we eat. Famous example, the amount of matzah we eat on Seder night, the first Seder night in Israel, and I believe both Seder nights, even maybe deoraita on a biblical level in Chutz La'aretz, but for sure at least the first night of Pesach, there's a certain amount of matzah you have to eat in order to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah. You can't get away with just eating some small morsel. If you're sick or like it really causes bad things for you, then there's a smaller amount. But ask your local rabbinic authority, your LOR, your local Orthodox rabbi, and he'll inform you about these shiurim. So, what's the shiur that would make you liable on Yom Kippur? Not a kazait or a revi'it. So how much? So the Gemara says, enough that would be miyatev date shel adam, right? Enough that will settle a person's mind, right? Now the mitzvah, the pasuk that comes where we know we're supposed to fast on Yom Kippur comes ve'anitem et nafshoteichem, right? And you should inflict your souls. You should afflict your souls. With this Mishnah and Gemara, we actually learn something a little bit different. It means that if the amount you're supposed to eat is something that settles your mind, and that's not what you're allowed to do, then clearly our minds are supposed to be unsettled. The point of fasting on Yom Kippur is not for it to be easy. It's specifically to make a crack in our perfect image of ourselves. After all, many of us are guilty of thinking, look, like I'm not perfect, but pretty close to it. Maybe some few things to to fine tune in referencing language, just to tweak. But overall, pretty good. Pretty good. Nothing major to work on here. Fasting on Yom Kippur is meant to create a bit of a smack in that direction, to kind of wake you up and to shake you up. You're all settled? Well, time to be unsettled. How much are you not allowed to drink? Whatever will settle your mind. We're not going to the kazait. You need less. There's a smaller amount of food that you could eat that would make someone be able to be more settled, and that's not the goal in Yom Kippur. The goal is not to be settled. It's specifically to get a little riled up, to get befuddled. I don't think that's the right word. The point is to get a little frazzled. That's better. So that's the point of Yom Kippur. So it's true. God wants us to do tshuva. And I guess one of the messages, this is me not referencing, perhaps one of the ways God anticipates us being able to be shaken out of this delusional reality which we spoke about on Tisha B'Av, right? Us thinking that we're at the center of the world, everything revolves around us. And Yom Kippur comes and kind of enforces this fast on us. We're fasting on Shabbat. That's usually prohibited, but where you fast even on Shabbat, specifically so that you're taken out of your comfort zone to kind of realize that, step back and realize that not everything is as it should be. So that's these are some critical messages of Yom Kippur. Gemar Chatima Tova. Have a wonderful, meaningful day, and Shabbat Shalom.